When you look someone in the eye and ask, "Exactly what made you think it was okay to treat me the way you did?" You are not being dramatic. You are finally stepping into the role you should have had from the beginning. The role of someone who expects to be treated with basic emotional decency. Because for so long you've been explaining your hurt instead of questioning their mindset. You've been asking, "Why am I not enough?" instead of asking, "What inside you decided this was acceptable?" And that shift changes everything. It takes the weight off your chest and puts it back where it belongs, on the choices they made while you were bleeding for the relationship. This question is brutal because it doesn't just ask, "Do you regret it now?" It asks, "What story were you telling yourself back then that allowed you to keep hurting me and still sleep at night?" And that is where the truth lies, not in the tears they cry when they feel you slipping away, but in the beliefs they held when they were canceling plans, going silent, breadcrumbing, gaslighting, or making you feel like you were asking for too much just for wanting consistency and honesty. Maybe they told themselves you would always forgive them. Maybe they believed you needed them more than they needed you. Maybe they convinced themselves that your reactions were the problem, not their behavior. Maybe they leaned on their trauma as a shield and quietly decided that because they were scared, anything they did in the name of fear was somehow justified. And by asking this question, you are making all of those hidden justifications come into the light. Because you are no longer satisfied with, "I was confused," or "I didn't mean to." You want to hear the inner logic that made it possible for them to treat you like an option when you were giving them everything. When you ask this, you're also checking for something essential. Can they separate explanation from excuse? A mature person might say, "I grew up around avoidance. I shut down when I'm scared. I didn't know how to communicate, so I ran." But they will follow it with, "And that still doesn't make it okay. I hurt you and I chose what was easiest for me instead of what was kind." An immature person will hide behind context as if it cancels out responsibility. "That's just how I am. You know I'm avoidant. You knew what you signed up for." And if that's their answer, you are hearing them clearly tell you that nothing has really shifted. They may miss you. They may feel lonely. They may hate the way things ended, but they still believe their comfort justifies your pain. This question is also for your nervous system, because your body remembers what it felt like to be dismissed, to be crying while they acted cold, to be begging for clarity and getting silence. And if you jump back in without understanding the mindset that allowed that, your body will never fully relax. It will always be braced for the moment they decide again that your heart is negotiable, your needs are annoying, your boundaries are optional. Asking, "What made you think it was okay?" is you testing whether their internal script has changed or just their circumstances. If all they can say is, "I don't know, I just messed up," that might sound humble, but "I don't know" is also a way of dodging. Because if they truly don't know, then what is stopping them from not knowing next time they feel overwhelmed and doing the same thing again? You are listening for signs that they have actually sat with themselves, not just sat in their feelings about missing you. You want to hear that they have questioned their entitlement, their emotional laziness, their need to feel in control at your expense. You want to hear, "I thought you'd never leave. I thought you'd always take me back, and I abused that. I told myself your tears were overreactions so I didn't have to change, and I was wrong." And yes, it will be uncomfortable for both of you, but that discomfort is the point. There is no healthy future with someone who can't tolerate being confronted with the impact of their behavior. If they get defensive, flip it back on you, say you're attacking them, or try to rush past this conversation with, Can't we just move on? That's your answer? They haven't actually crossed the bridge from ego to accountability. They're just trying to get relief from their guilt and loneliness by stepping back into your life without walking through the fire of owning what they did. You're not asking this question to punish them. You're asking it to protect yourself, to stop making their remorse more important than your safety, to stop letting your memory of the good times erase the reality of the harm. Their answer will tell you whether they simply miss what you gave them or whether they actually understand what they did to the part of you that kept giving. And your job is to listen not just to the words, but to the energy, the precision, the humility behind them. Because for someone to truly be safe for your heart, they don't just need to feel bad. They need to have looked at the exact beliefs that made your suffering feel like an acceptable price for their comfort and decided, from now on, that is no longer who I'm willing to be. What did you discover about yourself in the time we were apart is not a soft, romantic question. It is a mirror you are holding up to them, and it's also a mirror you are quietly holding up to yourself. Because time apart is not just a gap in contact, it is a laboratory. It is where patterns either repeat on autopilot or finally get exposed. And when you ask this, you are asking, did you use that time to actually see yourself, or did you just sit in your feelings and call it growth? You are asking, did you just miss me, or did you study the version of you who couldn't hold me? Because missing you is easy, almost automatic. Of course they missed your presence, your empathy, the way you understood their moods, the way you checked on them after a long day, the way your name at the top of their screen used to soften the noise in their head. But missing you doesn't require maturity. What requires maturity is looking in the mirror and admitting, I played a role in losing someone who loved me deeply, and I need to understand why I did that. So when you say, what did you discover? You are asking for evidence that they have actually looked at their own reflection instead of only staring at the hole you left. Real discovery sounds like, I realized I avoid hard conversations because I'm terrified of being seen as weak. It sounds like, I saw that I wait for people to chase me because I'm scared to show I care first. It sounds like, I noticed that I use I'm busy as a shield whenever emotions get intense. And I finally saw how I made you feel like your needs were wrong when really I was just overwhelmed by them. You are listening for specifics, not poetry. You are listening for patterns they can now name. Because if they can't name them, they can't change them. And if they can't change them, you will be walking straight back into the same maze with a different paint color on the walls. This question also forces them to separate loneliness from growth. A lot of people mistake the pain of missing someone for transformation. They think, I've suffered, so I must have changed. But suffering doesn't automatically teach, it just hurts. The learning comes when they sit in that hurt and ask, how did I create this? Where did I shut down? What did I refuse to hear when they were still here trying to tell me? If their answer is only, I realized how much you mean to me, that might sound sweet, but it is not enough because you already knew you meant something. You already felt the bond. The problem was not a lack of emotion, it was a lack of emotional responsibility. You are asking, did you discover where you abandoned the connection? Where you chose comfort instead of showing up? Where you hid behind your attachment style instead of doing anything about it? And quietly, this question is also checking how deeply they have seen you. Because someone who has really reflected will not just talk about themselves in a vacuum. They will say, I realized how much you held us together. I saw how unfair it was to call you needy when you were the only one fighting for us. I finally understood that your overreactions were actually your nervous system screaming that you felt alone with me. Those discoveries matter because they tell you whether they have finally placed proper value on what you brought into their life, or if they still see you as the person who was too much, while they remain the one who was just like that. In the time apart, you discovered things too. You discovered that, as much as you loved them, you could still breathe without their messages. You discovered that your body calms down when you are not constantly decoding mixed signals. You discovered that your life expands when you stop shrinking around someone else's fear. And asking this question is you honoring that growth. It's you saying, I did my work. Did you do yours? Because I am not willing to drag you across the finish line while calling it love. Their answer will reveal whether the distance between you was wasted or used, whether they spent it scrolling and distracting, waiting for the pain to fade, or whether they actually sat alone with their patterns and didn't look away. And you must be brave enough to hear it without editing it into what you wish it meant. If they are vague, if they say, I don't know, I just know I want you, that's your sign. If they get defensive, if they immediately pivot to what you did wrong, that's your sign. But if they can look you in the eye and say, I saw the part of me that runs, I saw the part of me that chose silence over honesty, I saw the part of me that enjoyed your love but didn't protect it, and I don't want to be that person anymore. And then quietly, slowly, consistently start behaving like someone who has really met themselves, then maybe, just maybe, the time apart was not just an ache you both survived, but a space that finally made them worthy of standing in front of the version of you who refused to stay small. What will you do differently the next time you feel like running? Is the question that exposes whether anything has truly changed, or if you're just entering the same maze with new wallpaper. Because avoidant people don't usually blow up a relationship when everything is easy. They fracture it when it gets real, when intimacy deepens, when conflict surfaces, when you hold up a mirror they can't ignore. That's when their nervous system screams, danger, get out, and their old pattern kicks in, shut down, withdraw, stonewall, rationalize, disappear, act cold until you either chase or give up. So if they're standing in front of you, now saying they want another chance, the real test is not how they behave when things are light and romantic. It's what they are prepared to do at the exact point where, last time they chose distance over connection. Asking, what will you do differently? Forces them to imagine that moment honestly, not as a vague hope that things will be better this time, but as a specific trigger point where their chest tightens, their thoughts spiral, their instinct says, run, and then demands a new choice. And if they can't describe that new choice in concrete terms, you are right to question whether this is change or nostalgia. You're not asking them to promise they'll never feel like running again. That would be a lie. You're asking whether they've developed any new tools, any new awareness, any new willingness to respond to that urge differently. Can they say, when I feel overwhelmed this time, I'll tell you instead of shutting down? Can they say, when my instinct is to disappear, I'll ask for a pause and agree on a time to reconnect so you're not left in limbo? Can they say, I'll let you know when my fear is talking so we can face it together, instead of acting like you're the problem and punishing you with silence? Can they name specific behaviors, like messaging instead of ghosting, staying in the conversation instead of hanging up, taking a break without cutting you off? Because if they can't get that practical, then their I'll do better is just air. This question also exposes whether they're willing to take responsibility for their impact. Because last time when they ran, they told themselves they were protecting themselves, calming down, needing space. But your body remembers a different story. Your body remembers staring at your phone, feeling sick, doubting your worth, wondering what you did wrong. And if they still think their disappearing act was harmless, if they still frame it only as self-care, they're not yet ready to treat your nervous system as equal to theirs. The right answer holds both truths. I do get overwhelmed and want to run, and I now understand that when I let that instinct drive, it destroys your sense of safety and makes you feel abandoned, so I can't keep doing that and call it love. You're also, very quietly, asking if they've built any internal capacity at all since you've been apart. Have they read, reflected, gone to therapy? Practice staying present in uncomfortable emotions, or are they just hoping feelings will magically override fear? Because without new capacity, they are asking you to invest your heart in the hope that sheer desire for you will be enough to override a lifetime of defense mechanisms. And you already know from experience that desire alone doesn't do that. They wanted you last time too, and they still ran. So as they answer, notice if they lean on vague promises. I won't run again, I've changed. Trust me. Or if they show you they've actually studied themselves. When I feel trapped, I tend to shut down and blame you. This time I'll name that feeling and ask for space without cutting you off. And if I mess up, I'm willing to be called out and repair it. And you must be honest with yourself as well, because this question is not just about whether they have a plan. It's about whether you can emotionally afford to go through another cycle of them running and you chasing. Your heart needs you to hear the difference between fantasy and reality, between pretty words and a grounded strategy, because the next time they feel like running will come, even in the healthiest relationships, fear, conflict, discomfort will return. And if there's no new pattern ready to meet that moment, your story with them will simply circle back to the same painful chapter, just written with a fresh pen. How are you going to make it emotionally safe for me this time? Is the question that flips the entire script, because in the past, every move you made was about making it safe for them. You studied their triggers, softened your tone, learned their trauma, waited for them to be ready, gave them space when they shut down, reassured them when they got distant, walked on eggshells when you were scared of losing them. You became the emotional airbag in the relationship, absorbing every impact, cushioning every shutdown, convincing yourself that if you could just create enough safety, enough softness, enough understanding, they would finally relax and choose you fully, and in the process, you quietly abandoned the one person no one was protecting: you. This question is you turning the wheel back toward yourself and asking the thing you never really asked before. If we do this again, how will you protect my heart? How will you show up for my nervous system? Because I refuse to go back into a dynamic where my pain is a side effect and your fear is the only thing we're building around. When you ask this, you are not looking for poetry. You are looking for structure. You are listening for whether they even understand what emotionally safe means for you. Do they know what it's like to be on the other side of their silence? Do they grasp how it felt to lie awake at night refreshing your messages, wondering if you did something wrong? Do they understand how destabilizing it was to never know which version of them you would get, the warm one or the distant one? Emotionally safe, for you might mean consistent communication, not constant, but predictable. It might mean they don't disappear when they're overwhelmed. It might mean they refuse to use silence as punishment. It might mean they reassure you, instead of making you feel crazy when your anxiety spikes because of their mixed signals. And if they don't even ask, what does safe feel like to you? That's your first answer. Someone who is ready to make it safe for you will be more interested in understanding your needs than defending their habits. They will say, "Tell me what safety means for you now." And they will listen without turning it into a critique of your sensitivity. They will want to know what triggers your fears, what soothes your system, what behaviors shatter your trust, because this time they aren't just asking for another chance at love, they are asking for another chance at stewardship of your heart. Their answer needs to include specifics, not just, "I'll try harder," or "I'll be better." Those are just emotional smokescreens. You are listening for things like, "I will not go days without responding if I'm upset. I'll tell you I need time and agree on when we'll reconnect. If I feel myself shutting down, I'll say it out loud instead of leaving you in the dark. If I mess up and hurt you, I'll initiate the repair instead of waiting for you to come fix it. I'll reassure you without making you feel needy for needing reassurance." These are the bricks of emotional safety, because safety isn't built on feelings alone. It's built on consistent, repeatable behaviors you can rely on. The same way you used to track their distance, your body will now track their presence. And if they are serious, they will understand that your trust is no longer something they can demand with a speech. It is something they will have to earn over time by making you feel safe again and again, especially in the moments that used to break you. This question is also a test of whether they have made the shift from seeing you as the caretaker of their emotions to seeing themselves as responsible for yours too. Previously, every argument ended with you calming them down, chasing them, decoding them. You twisted yourself into a therapist, teacher, an emotional shield, and that imbalance is what exhausted you. A healthy relationship is not one person forever adjusting to the other's fear. It is a mutual space where both nervous systems get to exhale, where both people feel like, if I'm hurting, the other will move toward me, not away from me. So when they answer, watch who remains at the center of their language. Do they keep saying, I, I, or do you hear, we? Do they talk about your experience or only about how hard this all is for them? Do they sound like someone who is ready to consider your internal world as equal to theirs? And beneath all of that, this question is an invitation for you to be honest about your own non-negotiables, because emotional safety is not a luxury for you anymore. It's a requirement. You've survived the opposite. You know what it feels like when love makes you more anxious than peaceful, more confused than grounded, more lonely in the relationship than out of it. So as they speak, you need to feel into your body and ask, does what they're promising actually calm my system? Or does it just sound good? Do I feel more settled or more spun up listening to them? Does this feel like a real plan or a temporary performance to get me back? Because the truth is, you are no longer just protecting your heart. You're protecting your future. And if they cannot tell you, and then show you, how they intend to make it emotionally safe for you this time, then the most loving thing you can do for yourself is to believe them. Not their wishful words, but the emptiness underneath them, and choose a path where safety is not an afterthought, but the foundation. What parts of the old dynamic are you unwilling to go back to? On your side and on mine is the question that finally pulls you out of fantasy and into reality. Because getting back together isn't just about missing each other. It's about refusing to step back into the same emotional roles that broke you the first time. And this question forces both of you to admit that it wasn't only their avoidance that shaped the relationship. It was also your overgiving, your over-explaining, your habit of abandoning yourself to keep the peace. You are not asking this to make them list their sins. While you stay spotless, you are asking it because if you don't both name exactly what cannot be repeated, You will unconsciously recreate it the moment the honeymoon glow fades. When you look at them and say, "Tell me what you refuse to repeat on your side, and I'll tell you what I refuse to repeat on mine." You are drawing a line in the sand together. You're saying, we're either building something new or we're not building at all, and that alone exposes a lot. Because someone who only misses the comfort of you will not want to have this conversation. They will want the vibes, the connection, the closeness, but not the accountability. They will say vague things like, "Let's just not fight like before," or "Let's just be better," and that tells you everything. They're not ready to look at specifics like silent treatment, ghosting, mixed signals, emotional shutdowns, or flirting with others for ego, and they're definitely not ready to look at the way you chased, begged, explained, and tolerated. This question asks them on your side, what are you done with? And you should hear things like, "I am unwilling to go back to ignoring your messages for days. I am unwilling to stonewall you when I'm upset. I am unwilling to make you feel crazy for having feelings. I am unwilling to keep everything undefined and expect you to act committed." And then it shifts to you. On my side, I am unwilling to chase you when you withdraw. I am unwilling to explain my worth to you over and over. I am unwilling to sit in relationships where I am chronically anxious and confused. I am unwilling to keep accepting apologies that are not followed by change. I am unwilling to pretend I'm okay with crumbs. This is not about blame. It is about refusing to rebuild a house on the same cracked foundation. The power of this question is that it doesn't let either of you hide in nostalgia. It reminds you that there were real patterns. Maybe you overfunctioned and they underfunctioned. Maybe you over-communicated and they under-communicated. Maybe you fought for the connection while they hid behind distance. And if those patterns aren't consciously retired, your nervous system will slide right back into them, no matter how many "I miss you" messages are sent. It also forces you to own your growth, because you're not just asking them to do better, you're declaring how you'll be different too. Maybe you say, "I'm unwilling to keep explaining the same boundary. I'll enforce it now. I'm unwilling to stay when my body is screaming no. I'm unwilling to turn into your therapist every time we argue." And that is crucial, because avoidant people are used to partners bending around their fear. And this time you're saying, "I will bend toward myself instead." When they answer, listen closely to whether they're unwilling to. Statements cost them anything. If all they say is, "I won't hurt you again," that's nice, but it's not concrete. You want to hear things that will actually stretch them. "I won't disappear when I'm overwhelmed. I'll communicate. I won't flirt with other people to feel powerful. I won't dismiss your feelings as overreactions." Because those are the exact places their ego used to protect itself at your expense. And if they're not willing to put those behaviors down, then the new relationship will just be the old one with a fresh start date. And you must be just as honest with yourself, because if you're not truly willing to walk away again, the moment those old dynamics return, then all these words are performance. Your future peace depends on your willingness to actually enforce what you say you won't go back to, even if your heart still loves them, even if the history is deep, even if it hurts. This question is not only about testing whether they've changed, it is about you declaring to yourself, "I will not abandon myself to keep this love alive. If we try again, it will be with two people protecting the relationship, not one person carrying it while the other hides behind fear."